Marcus Chen walked slowly into the massive throne room. Heavy energy shackles glowed around his wrists and ankles. Each step made a soft humming sound as the chains restricted his movement. He kept his head up, refusing to show fear, even though his heart pounded in his chest. The throne room was unlike anything on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high that Marcus could barely see the top. Massive pillars made of dark metal lined the walls. Strange symbols glowed on every surface, pulsing with a soft blue light. The floor was smooth like glass, reflecting everything above it. Hundreds of alien beings stood along the walls, watching him. Marcus had never seen so many different species in one place. Some looked like giant insects with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles. Others were floating clouds of gas trapped inside transparent suits. Tall warriors with gray skin and forearms stood at attention near the throne. They all wore elaborate clothing decorated with jewels and metals. Marcus was the last human alive. Earth had fallen 3 years ago after a brutal war against the Valorian Empire. The Valorians had destroyed city after city with their crystalline warships. Humanity had fought harder than any species before them, but in the end, it was not enough. Now Earth was a wasteland, and Marcus was alone. The guards pushed him forward. They were tall Valorian soldiers with pale blue skin and dark armor. Their faces showed no emotion as they forced Marcus to walk toward the throne at the end of the room. The crowd of aliens whispered to each other in languages Marcus could not understand. At the far end of the room sat Queen Ashara, the Eternal. She was the ruler of the Valorian Empire, the being who commanded thousands of star systems. Her skin was a lighter shade of blue than the guards, almost glowing in the dim light. She had 4 arms, folded gracefully across her lap. Her face was beautiful, but cold, like a statue carved from ice. 2 large eyes stared at Marcus without blinking. She wore flowing robes made of fabric that seemed to shift colors as she moved. Marcus had heard stories about Queen Ashara. She had ruled the empire for over 200 years. She had conquered more worlds than any leader before her. She never showed mercy to enemies. She never showed emotion at all. The guards stopped Marcus about 20 feet from the throne. One of them spoke in the common galactic language that Marcus had learned during his captivity. Kneel before Queen Ashara, the Eternal, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, ruler of the Valorian Empire. Marcus did not kneel. He stood straight and looked directly at the queen. A shocked gasp went through the crowd. The guards grabbed his shoulders and tried to force him down, but Marcus resisted. Queen Ashara raised one hand. The guards immediately stopped and stepped back. She studied Marcus for a long moment, her expression unchanged. Then she spoke, her voice clear and powerful. You are the last of your kind. Earth is gone. Your people are gone. Yet you still refuse to show respect. Why? Marcus took a breath. His voice was steady when he answered. Because I am still human, and humans do not kneel to those who destroy innocent worlds. Another wave of shocked whispers filled the room. Some of the alien dignitaries looked angry. Others seemed curious. Queen Ashara's expression did not change. Your defiance is meaningless, she said. You have already lost. Maybe, Marcus replied, but I can choose how I face the end. The queen was about to respond when Marcus did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He began to sing. The words came from deep in his memory. It was a lullaby his grandmother had taught him when he was a child. The song was in Mandarin, soft and gentle. His grandmother used to sing it to him when he had nightmares. She said her grandmother had taught it to her, and her grandmother before that. It was old, passed down through generations. Marcus did not know why he sang it now. Perhaps it was because he knew he was going to die. Perhaps he wanted to remember something beautiful from Earth one last time. Perhaps he just wanted to feel less alone in this room full of enemies. The melody echoed through the vast chamber. The words spoke of moonlight and stars, of peace and rest. Marcus closed his eyes as he sang, remembering his grandmother's gentle voice, remembering Earth before the war. When he opened his eyes, everything had changed. Queen Ashara was standing. Her 4 arms had fallen to her sides. Her eyes were wide, staring at Marcus with an expression of complete shock. The entire throne room had gone completely silent. Even the guards looked confused. In the 2 centuries that Queen Ashara had ruled, she had never stood for a prisoner. She never stood for anyone except the highest councils of the empire. Yet now she stood, frozen in place, staring at the human in shackles. Marcus stopped singing. His voice faded into silence. He did not understand what was happening. Queen Ashara descended the steps from her throne. Each step was slow and deliberate. The crowd parted as she walked toward Marcus. Her robes flowed behind her like water. The guards did not know what to do. They stood motionless, afraid to interfere. The queen stopped directly in front of Marcus. She was taller than him by almost a foot. Her luminescent skin glowed brighter this close. She stared into his eyes with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. It trembled slightly, showing emotion for the first time. "Where did you learn that song?" Marcus was confused by the question. "My grandmother taught me. It is just an old lullaby from Earth, a song to help children sleep." "Why does it matter?" Queen Ashara continued to stare at him. Her hands were shaking slightly. She seemed to be struggling with powerful emotions. The crowd watched in stunned silence, waiting to see what would happen next. "That song," the queen said slowly, "I have heard it before. Long ago. Very long ago." She turned to address the entire room, her voice regaining its commanding power. "Clear the chamber. Everyone except my personal guards will leave now." The alien dignitaries looked at each other in confusion, but no one dared to disobey. Slowly, they filed out of the throne room until only Marcus. The queen and 2 elite guards remained. Queen Ashara turned back to Marcus. She raised one hand, and the energy shackles around his wrists and ankles deactivated and fell to the floor with a loud clang. Marcus rubbed his wrists, staring at the queen in shock. "I don't understand," no, Queen Ashara said quietly, "but you will." Part 2. The recognition Marcus stood in the empty throne room, his shackles lying on the floor beside him. The 2 guards who remained were statues still, their faces showing no reaction to what had just happened. Queen Ashara circled around Marcus slowly, studying him from every angle. Her eyes never left his face. 237 of your years ago, the queen began, her voice soft and distant. I was not a queen. I was young. I was an explorer for the Valorian fleet. My ship crashed on a planet in a remote part of the galaxy, a world that your people called Earth. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. That is impossible. Earth had no record of alien contact that long ago. Your people never knew I was there, Ashara continued. She stopped circling and stood directly in front of him. My ship crashed in a rural area. Mountains and forests surrounded the crash site. I was badly injured. My navigation systems were destroyed. I sent a distress signal, but I knew it would take months for my people to find me in such a remote location. She paused, her eyes distant as she remembered. I would have died there, but then she found me. Who? Marcus asked. It's an old human woman. She was walking through the forest when she discovered my ship. Most beings would have run away in fear, but not her. She saw that I was hurt, and she helped me. Queen Ashara walked back to her throne and sat down, gesturing for Marcus to come closer. The guards did not stop him as he approached. The old woman could not move me by herself. I was too heavy. So she brought supplies to the crash site. Blankets, food, water, medicine. She came every day for weeks. She cleaned my wounds with strange-smelling liquids from your world. She brought me fruits and vegetables. She sat with me for hours. Marcus listened, barely breathing. His mind raced as he tried to understand what this meant. I could not speak her language, Ashara said. She could not speak mine. We used gestures and drawings to communicate. She was patient with me, kind. She risked everything to keep me alive and hidden. Why would she hide you? Marcus asked. I asked her the same question, using my limited communication methods. She made me understand that if others found me, they would take me away. Governments would experiment on me. Scientists would study me. She said I needed time to heal first. So she kept my presence a secret. The queen's voice grew even softer. Every night, she would sit beside me in that crashed ship, and every night she would sing to me. The same song you just sang? Over and over. I did not understand the words, but the melody was beautiful, calming. It helped me sleep despite the pain. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. My grandmother, he whispered. Ashara looked at him sharply. What did you say? My grandmother used to tell stories about finding something in the woods when she was younger. Something she called her secret friend. The family thought she was making up stories. She said she helped someone who was hurt, someone who was far from home. We all thought it was just imagination. The queen stood up again. She descended the steps and placed one of her 4 hands on Marcus's shoulder. Your grandmother saved my life. She cared for me for almost 3 months until my people finally located my distress signal. When the rescue ship arrived, I wanted to thank her properly. I wanted to bring her gifts to honor her with the highest recognition of our empire, but she refused. That sounds like her, Marcus said, his voice breaking. She never wanted attention. She just did what she thought was right. Before I left Earth, I made a promise to her. I promised that I would never forget her kindness. I promised that if I ever had the power to do so, I would protect her world and her people. Ashara's hand dropped from Marcus's shoulder. Her expression hardened, but I failed. Decades later, when I had become queen, the Council of Houses ordered the invasion of Earth. I argued against it. I fought the decision with every resource I had, but the Council overruled me. They said Earth was strategically important. They said humanity was too unpredictable, too resistant to proper order. You could have stopped them, Marcus said, anger creeping into his voice. You are the queen. I am the queen in title, Ashara replied bitterly. But the council holds the real power. The 12 great houses control the military, the economy, the resources. I can guide and influence, but I cannot command them to stop a war they have all agreed upon. She walked to a large window that showed the night sky filled with stars. I watched from orbit as my own ships burned your cities. I saw the mushroom clouds. I heard the screams through the communication channels, and I could do nothing. Marcus joined her at the window. Then why save me now? Why reveal all of this? Ashara turned to face him. Because you are the last. You are the final living reminder of what was done to Earth. And because when you sang that song, I realized something. The council made a mistake. What mistake? They thought that by destroying Earth, they would erase the problem humanity represented. But they were wrong. The problem was never your planet or your armies. It was your ideas. Your grandmother showed me kindness without asking for anything in return. She risked her safety for a stranger. Those are human values. And those values are dangerous to an empire built on conquest and control. One of the guards, a tall Valorian with scars across his face, stepped forward. My queen, what are you saying? Ashara looked at the guard. I am saying that I have spent 2 centuries watching this empire grow more corrupt. I have watched the council turn conquest into cruelty. I have watched them destroy species and cultures for profit, and I have been powerless to stop it. Until now, she turned back to Marcus. You are a symbol, the last human. If I can protect you, if I can reveal the truth about what happened to Earth, I can begin to turn the people against the council. I can show them that this empire has lost its way. You want to start a rebellion? Marcus said. I want to start a reformation, Ashara corrected. I want to remind our people of the old Valorian values. Honor, respect, the sacred debt code that says when someone saves your life, you owe them everything. Your grandmother saved my life. I owe a debt to her people. To you, before Marcus could respond, alarms suddenly blared throughout the palace. Red lights flashed along the walls. The second guard pulled out a communication device and listened intently. His expression darkened. My queen, the guard said urgently, the Council of Houses has called an emergency session. They demand your immediate presence in the council chamber. Shara's eyes narrowed. They know someone in the throne room must have transmitted what happened here. What will they do? Marcus asked. They will demand that I execute you as proof of my loyalty to the Empire. If I refuse, they will try to remove me from power. She looked at her two guards. Captain Narration, Commander Serix, where do your loyalties lie? The scarred guard, Captain Narration, knelt on one knee. With you, my queen, always. Commander Serix, a female Valorian with silver markings on her face, also knelt. We remember the old ways. We remember honor. We will follow you. Ashara nodded. Then we go to face the council. All of us, together. Marcus felt fear creeping through him, but he pushed it down. What do you need me to do? The queen looked at him with something that might have been respect. Be yourself. Be human. Show them what your grandmother showed me. That is all I ask. As they walked toward the council chamber, Marcus thought about his grandmother. She had been dead for 10 years, passing away before the invasion even began. She never knew that her secret friend had become a queen. She never knew that her simple act of kindness would echo across centuries and light years. But Marcus knew. And somehow, that made him feel less alone. Part 3. The conspiracy. The council chamber was different from the throne room. Where the throne room was built to inspire awe and fear, the council chamber was built for power. It was a massive dome with 12 elevated seats arranged in a circle. Each seat represented one of the great houses that controlled the Valorian Empire. In the center was a platform where those being judged had to stand. Marcus walked onto the central platform with Queen Ashara beside him. Captain Narration and Commander Serix stood slightly behind them, hands on their weapons. The 12 council members sat above them. Looking down like judges at a trial, Marcus recognized some of the species from the throne room. The head of the military house was a massive Gorath named Lord Vexerin. He had gray skin like stone and 4 arms heavily muscled from a lifetime of combat. His scarred face showed decades of battle. He glared at Marcus with open hatred. The head of the commerce house was Lady Cynthara, a being that looked almost like a Valorian, but with silver skin and cold, calculating eyes. She wore expensive jewelry and robes that probably cost more than an entire planet's yearly production. The other council members represented different houses: technology, agriculture, mining, intelligence, medicine, transportation, energy, manufacturing, communication, and science. Together, they controlled every aspect of the Empire's vast resources. Lord Vexerin spoke first, his voice booming through the chamber. You dishonor us all, Ashara. That creature should be in chains or dead. Instead, you freed it and brought it before this council. Explain yourself. Queen Ashara's voice was calm but firm. I freed Marcus Chen because his people saved my life 2 centuries ago. The Valorian debt code is clear. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt that supersedes all other obligations. Lady Cynthara laughed, a cold sound without humor, a convenient claim that cannot be verified. You fabricate excuses to protect a pet. The last human should be eliminated so we can finally close the chapter on Earth's rebellion. I fabricate nothing, Ashara said. She gestured to Commander Serix, who activated a holographic display system. The air above the platform filled with images and data. Medical records appeared first, showing injuries consistent with a crash landing. Then came navigation logs from Ashara's ship, showing the exact date and location of the crash on Earth. Star charts proved the position. Communication logs showed the distress signal and the 3-month delay before rescue, but the most powerful evidence came last. A video recording from Ashara's personal files, recorded inside her damaged ship over 200 years ago. In the video, a younger Ashara spoke in the Valorian language. Her voice was weak and pained. Personal log, day 47 of confinement. The human woman came again today. I still do not know her name, but her kindness continues to amaze me. She brought fresh fruit and clean water. She sang to me again, the same song she sings every night. I have recorded the melody in my ship's database. If I survive this, I want to remember her forever. The recording showed the grandmother, much younger, sitting beside the crashed ship. She was singing the same lullaby Marcus had sung in the throne room. The melody was unmistakable. The council chamber fell silent. Even the most skeptical members looked shaken. The evidence was too detailed, too old to be fabricated. Lord Vexeron recovered first. This proves nothing about current policy. So what if a human helped you centuries ago? Earth was conquered by proper council decree. The law was followed. The decision was made by majority vote. The law was corrupted, Ashara said sharply. And I have proof. She nodded to Captain Arachin, who activated another set of holographic displays. This time, the data showed secret communications between council members from 3 years ago. Just before the Earth's invasion was approved, the first communication was from Lord Vexeron to the Technology House. Human broadcasts we intercepted showed dangerous philosophical concepts. They speak of individual freedom, democratic choice, and resistance to absolute authority. If these ideas spread to our subjugated species, we could face empire-wide rebellion. A message appeared. This one from Lady Synthora to the Intelligence House. Economic projections show that Earth's destruction will create massive profit opportunities. Rebuilding contracts, resource extraction, and new colony establishment will generate wealth for the participating houses. The human question is not just ideological, it is financially beneficial. More messages appeared, each one more damning than the last. The council members had known that Earth posed no military threat. They had destroyed humanity not for security, but because human ideas about freedom and individual rights threatened their control over billions of subjugated beings. You planned genocide, Ashara said, her voice filled with controlled rage. Not for protection, not for defense, but for profit and political control. Lord Vexeron stood up, his massive frame intimidating even from a distance. You overstep your bounds, Ashara. Yes, we made a decision to protect the Empire's stability. That is our duty. Human philosophy was spreading through our communication networks. We intercepted broadcasts, entertainment programs, philosophical texts. They all promoted dangerous ideas about equality and freedom. We did what was necessary. You murdered billions, Marcus said quietly. The council members all turned to look at him. He had been silent until now, but the revelations had pushed him past fear into cold anger. Billions of people who just wanted to live their lives, Marcus continued. People who had families, dreams, hopes. You decided they did not deserve to exist because they believed in freedom, because they questioned authority, because they thought differently than you. Lady Synthora waved her hand dismissively. Emotional appeals are meaningless. The strong survive, the weak perish. That is the way of the universe. No, Marcus said firmly. That is the way of tyrants. The universe is bigger than your empire, and ideas are stronger than your weapons. Lord Vexeron laughed. Bold words from the last of a dead species. Your ideas did not save your people. Maybe not, Marcus admitted. But my grandmother's idea saved a queen. One act of kindness by one human changed the life of the most powerful being in your empire. Imagine what billions of humans could have accomplished if you had given them a chance. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The argument was having an effect, though they tried to hide it. Ashara seized the moment. I call for a vote of no confidence in the current council structure. These communications prove corruption and conspiracy. The council has betrayed the fundamental values of the Valorian Empire. You cannot do that, Lord, Vexeron said, though he sounded less certain. I can, and I do. The Valorian Constitution allows the monarch to call such a vote when presented with evidence of corruption. I have that evidence. Now the people must decide. Lady Synthora stood, her voice turning threatening. If you pursue this, Ashara, we will remove you from power. The council controls the military. We control the resources, control everything that matters. You control nothing without the consent of those you rule, Ashara replied, and I intend to give them a choice. Lord Vexeron made a gesture, and armed guards began entering the council chamber. They wore the colors of the military house, not the royal guards. There were at least 50 of them, all armed with advanced weapons. Captain Arachin and Commander Serix drew their weapons, but they were vastly outnumbered. Stand down, Ashara, Lord Vexeron commanded. Execute the human and pledge loyalty to the council, or we will remove you and install a more cooperative monarch. Marcus felt his heart racing. They were trapped. Even with the evidence of corruption, the council had the power to simply eliminate anyone who opposed them. But Ashara smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had planned for exactly this moment. "I was hoping you would do that," she said softly. Then she spoke louder. "Commander Serix, activate Protocol 7. Commander Serix pressed a button on her communication device. Suddenly, every holographic display in the chamber changed. Instead of showing the council chamber, they showed broadcasts going out across the entire empire. Every planet, every ship, every communication device in Valorian space was now receiving a live feed from the council chamber. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds were watching Lord Vexeron's armed guards surround their queen. "You have just shown the entire empire what the council truly is," Ashara said calmly. "Tyrants who rule by force, not by law." Lord Vexeron's face turned dark with rage. He realized the trap too late. Any action he took now would be witnessed by everyone. Part 4. The broadcast across the Valorian Empire. Billions of beings stopped what they were doing. On mining colonies deep underground, workers looked up at screens showing the council chamber. On agricultural worlds, farmers paused their harvesting machines. On military ships patrolling the borders, soldiers watched their communication displays with growing shock. In the council chamber, Lord Vexeron stared at the holographic displays showing the live broadcast. His armed guards looked uncertain, their weapons lowering slightly. They had signed up to enforce council orders in private, not to threaten their queen in front of the entire empire. "Turn off the broadcast," Lord Vexeron commanded. Commander Serix shook her head. "It cannot be turned off. It is being transmitted from multiple sources across the empire simultaneously. We set this up months ago, waiting for the right moment." "You planned this," Lady Cynthia said, her voice filled with venom. "You manipulated us into revealing ourselves." "I gave you the opportunity to be honest," Queen Ashara replied. "You chose threats and violence instead. Now everyone sees the truth." Marcus watched as the council members looked at each other, silently communicating. They were trying to figure out how to escape this situation, but there was no escape. Their threats, their armed guards, their conspiracy, all of it, was now public knowledge. Ashara turned to face the cameras directly, addressing the Empire. "Citizens of the Valorian Empire, I am Queen Ashara. For 2 centuries, I have served this empire to the best of my ability. But I have failed you. I allowed the Council of Houses to gain too much power. I stood by while they made decisions based on profit and control rather than honor and justice." She gestured to the evidence still floating in holographic displays. 3 years ago, Earth was destroyed. Billions of humans died. The Council told us it was necessary for security. But as you have just seen, they lied. Earth was destroyed because human ideas about freedom threatened the Council's power. Because human philosophy promoted equality and individual rights. Because humans dared to question authority. Marcus stepped forward. Ashara nodded to him, giving him permission to speak. He took a deep breath, aware that billions of beings were watching him. "My name is Marcus Chen," he began, his voice steady despite his fear. "I am the last human. 3 years ago, I watched my world burn. I watched everyone I loved die. I thought humanity died for nothing. But today I learned something important," pointed at Queen Ashara. 200 years ago, my grandmother saved this queen's life. She was just an old woman who found someone hurt in the woods. She did not know that person was an alien. She did not know that person would become the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. She just saw someone who needed help, and she helped them. That is what humans do. That is what any decent being should do. On a mining colony in the Outer Rim, a group of Krell workers listened to Marcus's words. They were an insectoid species that had been conquered by the Valorians 50 years ago. They worked 18 hours a day in dangerous conditions, all to extract resources for the Empire. One of them, an older Krell named Tixkar, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "The human speaks of kindness without reward," Tixkar said to his fellow workers. "When was the last time we saw such a thing in this empire?" "On an agricultural world called Pravine's Garden," A family of nether gaseous beings contained in environmental suits watched the broadcast together. The father, Venchel, had been considering joining a resistance movement. The Council's destruction of Earth had troubled him deeply. Now, seeing the evidence of conspiracy, his doubts vanished. "We cannot continue living like this," Venchel said to his family. "If they destroyed an entire species for having ideas, what will they do to us if we speak out?" His daughter Keshina, who was young and idealistic, responded, "Then we must speak out together. So many that they cannot silence us all." Similar conversations were happening on thousands of worlds. The broadcast was breaking through decades of propaganda and fear. People were beginning to question the empire they served. Back in the council chamber, Lord Vexeron made a decision. Could not stop the broadcast, but he could still control the narrative. He stepped forward, his voice booming with authority. "Yes, we made difficult decisions. That is what leadership requires. We protected this empire from dangerous ideologies that would have torn us apart. We ensured stability and order. You rather have chaos? Would you rather have rebellion and war across every system?" It was a strong argument. Many in the empire valued stability above all else. They had lived through conquests and upheavals. The promise of peace, even at the cost of freedom, was appealing. But Marcus had an answer ready. He had spent 3 years thinking about why Earth fell. He had spent countless hours analyzing what went wrong. And he had learned something important. "You call it stability?" Marcus said, looking directly at Lord Vexeron. "But stability for whom? The Krell work 18 hours a day in your mines? The Nether grow food they cannot afford to eat themselves. The Preven lost their religion and their culture when you conquered them. This is not stability. This is oppression. Oppression always fails eventually." He turned back to the cameras, addressing the watching billions. "My people fought you for 3 years. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and alone. But we fought because we believed in something worth dying for. We believed that every being has the right to live freely, to think freely, to choose their own path." Marcus's voice grew stronger. "You can destroy worlds, you can kill billions, but you cannot kill ideas. Human philosophy is not unique. Every species in this empire has members who dream of freedom, who want to make their own choices, who are tired of being told what to think and how to live. Earth is gone, but the idea of Earth lives on in every being who refuses to accept tyranny." On a military ship patrolling the border, a young Valorian officer named Thresh listened to Marcus's words. Thresh had lost friends during the Earth campaign. He had followed orders, believing he was protecting the Empire, but now he wondered if he had been on the wrong side. He looked at his commanding officer. "Sir, is it true? Did we destroy Earth just because of their ideas?" The commanding officer was older, a veteran of many campaigns. He had seen the classified reports. He knew the truth. And he was tired of lying. "Yes," the officer said quietly. "It is true." Thresh felt something break inside him. All the justifications he had told himself collapsed. Then what have we become? The commanding officer had no answer. Back in the council chamber, Lady Synthra tried a different approach. Even if mistakes were made, even if the council acted improperly, what can you possibly do about it? The structure of power is too deep, too established. You cannot simply tear it down without destroying everything. Queen Ashara had been waiting for this argument. "You are correct that we cannot destroy the existing structure, but we can transform it." 1. Propose a new system. The Valorian Federation. She activated another holographic display, showing a detailed proposal. Each conquered world will have representation in a new galactic senate. Species will maintain their cultures and autonomy while cooperating for mutual benefit. The Council of Houses will remain, but they will be balanced by elected representatives from all member species. No more rule by force. No more decisions made by a few for the many. It was a radical proposal. It would fundamentally change the entire empire. Many council members looked horrified at the idea of sharing power. But across the empire, the response was different. On mining colonies, in agricultural fields, on military ships, beings began to hope. They began to believe that change might be possible. Lord Vexeron sneered. "And if the council refuses this fantasy? If we simply end this broadcast and continue as before, Queen Ashara smiled coldly. Then the people will make the choice for you. Look at your screens. Look at what is already happening. New holographic displays appeared, showing live feeds from across the Empire. On dozens of worlds, peaceful protests were beginning. Workers were putting down their tools. Farmers were leaving their fields. Even some military units were standing down, refusing orders. It was not violent. It was not chaotic. It was simply millions of beings saying no more. The council members looked at each other in growing panic. They had power, but power meant nothing if no one followed their orders. Marcus watched it all unfold with amazement. His grandmother's simple act of kindness, 2 centuries ago, had started a chain of events that was now shaking an entire empire. Ideas truly were stronger than weapons. Part 5. The new beginning. The peaceful protests spread faster than anyone expected. Within 6 hours of the broadcast, over 300 worlds had reported work stoppages. It was not rebellion in the traditional sense. There was no violence, no destruction, no attacks on Valorian installations. People simply stopped working. They gathered in public spaces, holding signs and singing songs. They demanded change. On the mining colony of Terax Prime, thousands of Krell workers assembled in the main square. Tixa, the elder worker who had first spoken about Marcus's words, stood at the front of the crowd. He held a simple sign written in both Krell and Valorian languages. We remember kindness. The colonial governor, a Valorian official named Ketral, came to address the crowd. He brought security forces with him, expecting to disperse the protests with threats. But when he saw the sheer number of peaceful protesters, he hesitated. Return to work, Governor Ketral ordered. This protest is illegal under imperial law. Tixkar stepped forward. He was old, and his chitin was scarred from decades of mining work, but his voice was strong. We will return to work when the Empire returns to honor. We will return to work when we have representation. We will return to work when we are treated as beings, not as resources. The crowd behind him roared in agreement. Governor Ketral looked at his security forces. They were outnumbered 50-1. He could order them to attack, but what would that accomplish? You cannot mine, or with weapons. You cannot force productivity at gunpoint. He made a decision that would be repeated by officials across the Empire. He lowered his weapon and contacted the council chamber directly. This is Governor Ketral of Terax Prime. I am unable to restore order without significant bloodshed, requesting new instructions. Similar messages were flooding into the council chamber from across the Empire. Colonial governors, military commanders, administrative officials, all reporting the same thing. The Empire was grinding to a halt. In the council chamber, the 12 houses faced a crisis unlike anything in their history. They had weapons, but weapons were useless against peaceful resistance. They had laws, but laws meant nothing when billions refused to follow them. They had power, but power evaporated when people stopped believing in it. Lord Vexeron looked at his fellow council members. For the first time in his long life, he felt genuine uncertainty. We cannot give in to this. If we show weakness, we lose everything. We have already lost, said Lord Krenthal of the Science House, a normally quiet council member who rarely spoke in meetings. Look at the data. Agricultural production has dropped 40%. Mining output is down 60%. 3 military fleets have declared neutrality and refused to act against protesters. The Empire is collapsing around us. Lady Synthra's cold calculations led her to the same conclusion. If we continue on the current path, we will face total economic collapse within 2 weeks. Violent suppression would require deploying forces on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. Even if we succeeded, we would rule over ruins. Then what do you propose? Lord Vexeron demanded. Before anyone could answer, a new voice entered the conversation. It came through the still active broadcast system, but it was not from the council chamber. It was from a military ship in orbit above the capital world. This is Fleet Admiral Terquan of the Third Fleet. I am broadcasting to all Valorian military forces. I have reviewed the evidence presented by Queen Ashara. I have witnessed the Council's attempt to threaten our Queen with armed force. I have seen the peaceful protests across the Empire. As of this moment, the Third Fleet recognizes only the authority of Queen Ashara. We will not act against protesters. We will not enforce council orders that violate Valorian honor codes. Any military personnel who wish to join this stand may do so without fear of punishment. It was a declaration of mutiny, and it was being broadcast to every military unit in the Empire. Lord Vexeron's face went pale. The Third Fleet was one of the most powerful military forces in the Empire. If they defected, others would follow. Within minutes, responses came in. The Seventh Fleet joined the Third, then the Ninth, then individual ships from other fleets. Not all military forces defected, but enough did to make armed enforcement impossible. Queen Ashara watched as the Council's power crumbled in real time. She felt no joy in it, only sadness that it had come to this. But she also felt hope. Real hope for the first time in decades. The choice is before you, she said to the Council. You can continue to resist and watch the Empire tear itself apart. Or you can accept change and help build something better. Lord Vexeron sat down heavily in his seat. He was a warrior who had won 1,000 battles. But this was not a battle he could win. What guarantee do we have that this Federation will not simply fall into chaos? None, Ashara admitted. Democracy is messy. Shared power is complicated. There will be conflicts and disagreements, but it will be honest, and it will be just. That is more than we have now. One by one, the council members accepted reality. Some did so with grace, others with bitterness, but all of them agreed to negotiate the transition to the new Valorian Federation. The negotiations took 3 months. Representatives from every species in the Empire came to the capital world. Marcus attended many of the sessions, serving as a symbolic reminder of why the change was necessary. He was no longer a prisoner or even just the last human. He was an ambassador for the idea that all beings deserved respect and freedom. The structure of the Federation was complex. The Council of Houses remained. But their power was balanced by a galactic senate, where each species had representation based on population. A charter of rights was established, guaranteeing freedom of thought, speech, and belief. Worlds could maintain their own cultures and governments as long as they met basic standards of justice. It was not perfect. There were compromises that frustrated everyone. Some species wanted more autonomy. Some houses wanted to maintain more power. But it was better than what had come before. On the day the Valorian Federation was officially established, Queen Ashara gave a speech to the assembled representatives. Marcus stood beside her on the platform, along with Captain RHN and Commander Serix. Today we begin something new, Ashara said. We acknowledge the mistakes of the past. We cannot bring back the worlds we destroyed. We cannot undo the suffering we caused. But we can choose to be better going forward. She turned to Marcus. The last human taught me an important lesson. He reminded me that kindness matters, that individual actions can change the course of history, that ideas are more powerful than weapons. His grandmother saved my life with simple compassion, and that simple act of compassion has transformed an empire. Marcus stepped forward to speak. He had prepared remarks, but when the moment came, he spoke from his heart. I stand here as the last of my kind. Earth is gone. Humanity is extinct. But the values my people believed in, freedom, equality, justice, those values live on. They live in every species here that demanded change. They live in every being who refused to accept tyranny. They live in this new federation we are building together. He paused, feeling the weight of representing billions who could not speak for themselves. My grandmother used to tell me that the measure of a civilization is not in its power or wealth, but in how it treats the weakest among its members. The old empire failed that test. This new federation has the chance to pass it. Please do not waste this opportunity. The assembled representatives stood and applauded. Not everyone agreed with everything, but everyone recognized the significance of the moment in the months that followed. The Federation faced many challenges. Economic adjustments were difficult. Some species struggled with the transition to self-governance. Old conflicts between species resurfaced. Now that the Council was not enforcing peace through threat of force, but there were also remarkable successes. On Terrax Prime, the Krell workers formed a cooperative that improved mining safety and increased productivity. On Praveen's Garden, the Nether began teaching their traditional culture in schools again. On dozens of worlds, beings who had never dared to dream of freedom began building new futures. Marcus became a traveling ambassador, visiting different worlds and helping facilitate communication between species. He learned dozens of languages and customs. He made friends among species that had been humanity's enemies just months before. 1 year after the broadcast, Marcus stood at a memorial being constructed in orbit above Earth. It was a massive structure made of crystal that caught the light of the sun and scattered it in rainbow patterns. On the crystal were engraved the names of every human who had died during the invasion. Billions of names. It would take a person a lifetime to read them all. Queen Ashara joined him at the memorial. She looked at the names in silence for a long time. I am sorry, she said finally. Those words are inadequate, but they are all I have. Marcus nodded. I know, and I forgive you. Not because what happened was acceptable, but because holding on to hate will not bring them back. My grandmother taught me that too. Ashara placed one hand on his shoulder. What will you do now? You could remain here, help govern the Federation. You've earned that right. Marcus looked out at the stars. I think I want to travel. Visit new worlds, meet new species. Maybe along the way, I will find other survivors. Other species that the old empire claimed were extinct. It is a big galaxy. There might be hope we have not yet discovered. That is very human of you, Ashara said, with something that might have been a smile. To remain hopeful, even after everything. It is the only way I know how to be, Marcus replied. He stayed at the memorial for another hour, reading names and remembering faces. His parents, his friends, his grandmother. All gone, but not forgotten. As he prepared to leave, Marcus sang the lullaby one more time. His voice echoed in the emptiness of space, a small sound against the infinite dark, but it was heard. And remembered across the Federation, beings who had witnessed the broadcast told their children about the last human, about his grandmother's kindness, about how one person could change the galaxy. The story became legend. Then legend became inspiration, and in that inspiration, humanity lived on, not in genes or bodies, but in ideas and values, in the belief that every being mattered, that kindness was strength, that freedom was worth fighting for. Marcus Chen walked into that throne room in shackles, but when he left, he walked free, and he left behind a better galaxy than the one he had found. The last human had become the first citizen of a new age, and that age would be defined not by conquest or control, but by the simple truth his grandmother had known all along, that we are all stronger when we choose compassion over cruelty, understanding over fear, and hope over despair. The end of humanity became the beginning of something greater. And somewhere among the stars, an old woman's lullaby still echoed, a reminder that kindness once given never truly dies.